Welcome, 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 Maggie Haberman.
Thank you, Molly. Thank you for having me.
So, oldest president ever, Donald Trump. How much anxiety is there about Donald Trump's health?
Thanks for having me to talk about regime change, Molly.
Yes. Well, yes, we will do that in the intro.
Number one. So we talk a bit about Trump's health in the book, but candidly, there's nothing that we learned that would change people's understanding of what's happening and what has happened. What we write is that he's visibly older, that they have stopped releasing as much information, that he has this chronic venous insufficiency condition where his ankles were swelling, that there was this episode, at least one, where, his hours have gotten stranger at night. He's always been not much of a sleeper, but they couldn't reach him one morning and a trusted aide went up to the residence and he was still asleep. And so concern about health, again, I don't know what I don't know. Jonathan doesn't know what he doesn't know. What we can see is that he is 80 years old and looks it. There's rashes under the skin. There's the ankles thing. There's the chronic bruising of the hand. So with any 80-year-old in office, as we saw with Biden, and we have seen with other older presidents, there is always more concern than otherwise. But whether there is some greater reason to be, it's very hard to say. And Molly, one of the things we write about in the book is that they're actually very good at keeping secrets, this White House. Really good, much better than term one. Donald Trump's health is one of the best kept secrets around. So
one of the things that's incredible, and I haven't finished the book, but I have read this incredible excerpt, which you had out of the Situation Room. I would love you to talk about that incredible reporting from the Situation Room about Bongino and Susie Wiles and the meeting about the Epstein files.
First of all, just to set the scene here, there were a number of Epstein-related Situation Room meetings prior to the release of that memo and after. We focused on a few of them, three of which had a huge group of participants, White House Chief of Staff, the Vice President, the White House Counsel, comms folks, the top levels of the Justice Department, all figuring out, how to deal with, in the specific ones that we focused on, essentially a crisis comms issue. Now, in the case of the Bongino meeting in particular, this was a smaller one. And the reason that this came about was because Bongino and Kash Patel, the FBI director, and J.D. Vance had really made not careers, but they had really gotten attention and a lot of support in the MAGA media ecosystem for several years, talking about the conspiracy, as they were putting it, to hide, a cabal of predators around Jeffrey Epstein. They maintained there was a client list. They wanted this released. All the files will be released when Trump is back in office. So Trump himself, by the way, was really kind of only half-hearted about this. So when they take office, they're trying to placate the base. Pam Bondi makes a huge blunder early on and appears to confirm the existence of a client list and suggests she's looking at it. And the administration then finds itself dealing with that. She also hands out these binders to influencers, which had been prepared, as we understand it, she told other people and her staff told other people, by the FBI. And they were told, again, according to what they told other people, that they were told by the FBI that these contained new information. There was almost nothing new in these binders that went out to these right-wing influencers at the White House. But what was more was that Trump's name was in them. And so, the comm shop had not been warned about that. If you flip it open, again, Trump's name had been out there in some previously released files. It's one of the things, Molly, that I think people don't understand too, is how much stuff had been out there previously, because the Epstein story is quite sprawling, covers a bunch of different investigations and civil suits and so forth. So this became this sort of growing churn that they were trying to deal with. Bongino and Patel, but particularly Bongino, were very frustrated. They felt like they were being held accountable by their base, by their supporters, for a strategy that they didn't approve of. They were very angry at Bondi for that error. And this meeting takes place because Bongino in particular is being accused by the White House Chief of Staff, Susie Wiles, of leaking negative stories. And Bongino gets very angry and he blows up. It's this remarkable scene. He is bellowing at the White House chief of staff in front of this small group of people. Essentially, I'll give you, $100,000 if you can walk out and prove it outside this room. And she says something like, we all got ourselves into this. And he says, no, no, no. I didn't get us into any of this. And he storms out and he tells many associates that Bondi, his boss, who he keeps referring to as Blondie, which was Laura Loomer's name for her, that she effed this whole thing up. He had been enjoying his life and he had a successful podcast and he gave it all up. And this is going to be President Trump's Iran-Contra. That was what he said to several people. Watching this meeting, some folks were taken aback because Susie Wiles is essentially a stand-in for the president. And it was really a very frontal attack. So that was that meeting. But it really spoke to this divide, Molly, within this administration and how paralyzed they were by dealing with this because the president did not want to talk about this. He just wanted it all to go away. He was snapping at everyone who entered his orbit. We have to be, clear. We don't know of any. There's nothing we learned in the course of our reporting that would change our understanding of Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein. But clearly they were friends for a long time. He didn't want these documents out. And so that left his staff with a series of terrible, in their minds, choices.
Yeah. I want you to talk. I just am curious your opinion here, because you guys have you're one of the few people where you seem to have real insights into what is actually going on, which I think goes back to what you said before, which is Trump 1.0, things were constantly, it was so
Totally.
leaky. I mean, it's just such a difference. And why this excerpt was so striking was because you actually had insight into what happened in those rooms, which we had not seen at all. So I'm just curious why you think that Patel decided to stay and Bongino decided to go.
At that moment, a lot of the White House staff expected that Bongino was going to quit. There were some who wanted to fire him. And there was a lot of upset about how he was speaking about all of this in general. But the worry for people around the president was that it would hurt the president if Bongino quit. That, if he walked off and sort of was talking loudly. And he really hasn't, or hadn't anyway, publicly until at least, prior to our book. I'm not sure if he has since. But that was the concern. He stayed, as we understand it, to be a team player. He didn't want to hurt the president. It's the same thing for Patel. Patel likes his job. He likes being in this job. And being thrown out of the president's orbit at this moment, but particularly for Bongino and Patel, can be damaging in its own way. So I think that is. And also, Molly, one thing I do think it's important, and the book shows this, the people around the president want to see him succeed. They do. I mean, this is not Trump won. They hate Democrats and the mainstream media much more than they hate any individual things that are happening inside this administration. And so it doesn't mean they agree with everything, but it's not, to your point about term one, where, to paraphrase Josh Dawsey, you had to be, absent eyes and ears to not get stories. This is just very different. And this is part of why it was so hard for us to get this book done.
I want you to talk about what is the tension between stakeholders that people don't see.
It's a really good question. Yeah. And I think that we do show what some of that tension is. Among the least kept secrets, but the ones that we animate a lot in this book with reporting is the disdain between Scott Bessent and Howard Lutnick, which is pretty remarkable. You do have, again, it's levels, right? So you have people, it's not, Jared Camp versus Steve Bannon Camp versus Reince Priebus. You have people who, they all want to see him succeed, but then there are people who believe that there are constraints on power, on presidential power, and people who are much less willing to cede that, right? So among the areas of division and tension are obviously over immigration that played out pretty clearly in Minnesota. In terms of the approach. Lots of people blamed Kristi Noem. She was not exactly well loved in the administration by a number of people, but the reality is that even though Stephen Miller did not want her, she was not his choice. She was the choice of other people, including some law enforcement groups, and she was Trump's choice. Her agency still technically was overseen, or at least in Stephen Miller's purview, because he is the top policy advisor and also just the main immigration person in Trump's world. But immigration has been a point of friction, especially how they were dealing with these immigration sweeps. You've seen business leaders or people in San Francisco complaining directly to the administration. Obviously, there was the
Right.
fallout after Alex Preddy and Renee Good were killed. That's one. Exactly what to do about tariffs. There's more unification around that how it was handled was something Trump wanted to try, but not a
Right.
coherent economic theory, and it was not backed by many people other than Peter Navarro, which is different than
Which is
term one.
not right. Yeah.
Yeah, and so in many ways, Molly, it's the same areas that we've seen in the past. It's just again, but it's not free traders versus protectionists. It's just sort of shades, and it's not black and white. It's a little more nuanced.
Why do you think this administration is so much better at keeping secrets than the first administration?
It's a great question, but they really are. And in our experience and in our reporting, the answer is because these are true believers
Right.
in him. They really are. I mean, they were many of them radicalized by the investigations into him by
Hmm.
uh, Walt Nauta, who is one of his top aides in the White House, was indicted alongside him in the documents
Hmm.
case. Other people received subpoenas in either the documents case or in the classified documents case or in the January 6th investigation, the 2020 election investigation, the special counsel investigation. Many of them were very upset about the Alvin Bragg case. The Letitia James civil fraud case. She did campaign in 2018 on going after Donald Trump,
Right.
and a lot of people around him. What She obviously has a number of supporters who liked that message, but there were other people who not only didn't like that message, but who saw it as an unusual departure from how campaigns for an attorney general's office usually work, and very politically infused. So that's a big thing. And again, it goes back to my point about who you hate and who you don't hate. A lot of it is too that's been sort of interesting. Susie Wiles had put together the most cohesive version of a White House that he has had, bar none. She had a lot of staff. We write about this in the book. A lot of staff who were very loyal to her, but also very loyal to Trump. And at a certain point, while Trump will often say to various advisors that he wants this or he wants someone running things effectively, he also wants to do what he wants to do,
Right.
and that's part of what we've been seeing happen now. And so, what we tried capturing in this book was that if people want to understand how their government works, not just sort of day-to-day news stories, among them was the debate over habeas corpus and suspending rights there. If people want to understand it, we tried to help them do that.
Do you think that if Susie Wiles had stayed with Ron DeSantis, that Ron DeSantis would be president? Just your opinion. Like, do you think she's such a big part of this story?
I think that two things are true. I think Ron DeSantis went after Susie Wiles in a way that appalled a lot of people in Florida politics who saw how she helped him with President Trump's buy-in to salvage his gubernatorial campaign. And I think that Ron DeSantis ran a really bad presidential campaign, and I'm not sure that Susie Wiles could have changed that. And I think that Donald Trump is a sui generis figure in our lifetime, politically and governmentally, who, by everyone we talked to, was guided effectively by Susie Wiles. But I think even Susie Wiles could not make Ron DeSantis a viable primary top contender against Donald Trump.
Natalie Harp, the human printer.
Right.
There's a lot of speculation that she is very close with Trump, whatever that looks like. What is your sense of their relationship?
Natalie Harp is in almost every single White House meeting. She is his most devoted aide. She left him these letters that we reported on for the New York Times a while ago. He
And the
has said
content of those were
yeah, I mean, one of them was that, something to the effect of "You are all that matters to me."
right,
The Secret Service was concerned about her during the campaign, or at least she raised their eyebrows. According to our reporting, the president's been pretty clear with people that, that he thinks everybody else will go on to make money and that she'll never leave. And the
right.
president really likes people who won't leave, which is another theme that we touch on.
Who stayed from Trump 1.0 to Trump 2.0, and how have they fared?
It's a good question. Very few people stayed
Mm.
from 1.0 to 2.0. One of the things that we write about is that, many people have rewritten their own stories to be, I was always with him. And that's really not true for most people. It was an incredibly small group of people. He brought Susie Wiles in early 2021 to take over what was a pretty shapeless post-presidency and post-presidential life at that point. But it was a handful of people. Stephen Miller, he wasn't working directly in the president's office the same way, but he has never really been out of Trump's orbit. And he had been preparing for a possible second Trump administration and presidency for a while. Again, we mentioned Susie Wiles. There are not a ton of others. There was, Margot Martin, who still works there, Walt Nauta, who we mentioned before, a handful of other people who worked at Mar-a-Lago. But yeah, Dan Scavino, obviously, who's now White House Deputy Chief of Staff. He's one of Trump's oldest and longest serving aides. And I should include Stephen Chung, who has been with him for a very long time. Caroline Leavitt did work in the first White House, although she was in a different and more junior role. Jason Miller, yeah, and Boris Epstein. I'm sorry, that's actually a name that I should have mentioned before. Well, Boris Epstein is really important to this story, and the story of sort of the efforts to try to dominate the media, to try to dominate law firms. He's not an official government employee. He's not a government employee at all. He is the president's top outside legal advisor, and the president has become very effective, or at least for a time was, at sort of an inside government, outside government effort to try to push these industries.
Maggie, thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Thanks for talking about the book.